Okay, Hilchos Chanuka. It's on, huh? So we've got Taf Reish Ayin. We're starting with Taf Reish Ayin, Seif Aleph. Okay. B'Kafeh b'Kislev, on the 25th day of Kislev. Matchilin Shmonat Yemei Chanuka. That's when the first day we begin Chanuka, the 8 days. V'Asurim b'Hesped v'Tanit. And it's Asur to do Hespedium or do a Tanis, to fast. Aval Mutarim b'Asiyat Malacha, but you're allowed to work. So there's a minhag about women who don't do work, like sewing and things along those lines. I think everyone agrees they're allowed to cook. Okay, no, I saw that in Chazan Avadia, but okay. Okay, and so it's good to allow them to keep their minhag. And this refers to the 30 minutes when, the first 30 minutes when the candles are lit in the proper time. We're going to learn all about if you light early, but the main point is it needs to be lit for at least 30 minutes from the beginning of the proper time in the evening, or at night. So, it was on the 25th day that that's when the war, or at least one of the main battles was completed. It was a final victory, and we were able to get back into the Beis HaMikdash at that time. That was on the 25th. Okay. What I wanted to now, as far as the woman, so we know it's based on a custom. It's based on a ma'aseh that happened with Yehudis. Now I'll just say over real quick the story. We're going to get that. But the part about that's the reason why it's in particular by Nashim. So we'll see in a second. The Rama mentions it, and then I'll go over the story. Fine. Alright, sorry. So let's get to Bet. Riboy ha-seudo shemarbim behem heim seudos harishos. Now, when people make seudas on Chanukah, so Mikar then it's really it's an optional seuda. There is an opinion that the seudas on Chanukah are considered a mitzvah, but the most hold it's only a rishus. Shelo kava'um lemishta v'simcha. That it wasn't established to make actual seudas like we have by Purim. One of the common explanations is by Purim they try to destroy our physical bodies, so we celebrate with a physical simcha. On Chanukah it was more about religion and ruchnius, so that's why. So we celebrate more with Hallel and praising the Kadosh Baruch Hu and the candles, etc. V'yesh omrim sheyesh k'tat mitzvah beriboy ha'seudos. So the Rambam is one of the opinions who says, this is the Rama speaking, but it's based on the Rambam as well, that there is actually a mitzvah to make meals. Mishum de be'osan hayamim haya chanukas hamizbeach. Now, the Rambam doesn't mention the second part about chanukas hamizbeach as far as I know, but there are other sources in Rishonim that mention this, that on the 25th of Kislev, not only do we know about the story of Chanukah, but that's also when Moshe Rabbeinu, in the Midbar, they completed making the Mishkan. But it wasn't dedicated until Nisan, which is when Yitzchak was born. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu, he wanted to wait until then. And I'm sure there's lots of other reasons. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu said, you know what? The Kamas HaMishkan really took place on 25th of Kislev, and that day deserves a special simcha, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu was waiting for a time to pay back that day, and that day was in the story of Chanukah. Okay? V'noagim lomar zemiros v'tishpachos v'seudo shamarbim bahem. Now the custom is we should say divrei Torah or songs and praises to a Kadosh Baruch Hu to share miracles. There's Nisim nowadays as well, Nisim Galuyim in the battles. Ve'az have seudas mitzvah. And when you talk about the miracles of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, then that itself, even if you hold it's only an optional seuda on Chanukah, it turns the seuda into a seudas mitzvah. Now, Yesh omrim sheish lechol gvina b'Chanuka. Now, some say there's a minhag that one should have milchaks or cheese, dafka on Chanuka, lefi shehanes naseh b'chalav she'achil Yehudis es ha'oyev. Because Yehudit fed the enemy milchaks. So, I'll just say there are a couple versions of who this Yehudis is. I'm going to say this real bekitzer. One of them's in the Ran. I mean, the Mishnah Berurah quotes it's based on the Ran and others. The Kolbo Bechule. The Ran's in the Daf Yud from the Rif, and they all say who's Yehudis? It's the daughter of Yochanan Kohen Gadol. There are other versions. I don't know. Me'am Lois says it's Yehudis Bas Be'eri. I don't know. Another one. So, anyways, that was this week's parsha.
And there's a sushtel that there's two separate mices.
Yeah. So it's very possible there are two different stories of two different in Yehudis, because there are certainly two different stories, or two different versions of the stories. There's even a third version, which is kind of a break off of one of them. And anyways, I'm not a historian, but just real bekitzer. So one of them is there is a gezerah against the Jews that any woman who wants to get married first has to go to the Greek general in charge and be with him for the night, and then she can be released to get married to her husband. That's Esav's wife in his past six parsha. I know. It's in the Me'amois, I don't know. Whatever. But okay. There's probably two stories of two different Yehudis, and I don't know who's who, but okay. And, okay. Whatever. So what did she do? So one version is this Yehudis, she was supposed to go for her night, when she was supposed to get married. And when it was her night, maybe it's an Eitzah Tova for all women sometimes, but what did she do? But she fed the husband a lot of wine and cheese and the general. So Yehudis fed the general too much cheese, wine, and wine really is what it was, and that's what got him. The cheese made him thirsty, and then fed him wine exactly, and then the general got drunk and fell asleep. And when he was asleep, she took his knife and shechted him, cut off his head, and brought it back to her people, to the Jewish people, and everybody got aroused to fight back. There's another version where, and again, we don't know exactly when exactly this happened, but anyways, but it was with the Greeks. Another one was she pretended to be a traitor, and she went and left the Jewish. There may have been a siege around the Jewish, a siege laid on the Jewish, if it was Yerushalayim or a different city, again different versions. And she came to them and said, no, she's going to teach them all the tricks and how to get in, how to fight the Jews. And she was telling them, yeah, I know God's against the Jewish people now, and this is it. So they trusted her, and she was one of the most beautiful women in the world at the time, and she got herself all beautiful and makeup and clothing, etc., etc. She got them to believe him, and then she was able to. And she went. She said she used to go pray. She needed to go pray at night to the God of the Jewish people, who really wants to hurt the Jewish people, and they all believed her. And so, anyways, basically, she came in with whatever. Bottom line is, when the general in the charge, that was Eliphornis, wanted to be with her, so she was able to get in and to spend the night, and basically the same story. She fed him cheese or wine or milk, whatever the story was, and then she got him drunk, and then again, shechted, cut off the head, took it back with her maidservant or her helper in a bag, and nobody knew what happened. Actually, a little bit like Shimon and Levi's story. Nobody knew what happened whatsoever. She was able to leave at night because she always left at night. Everything was completely normal. She comes back to Jewish people, and then afterwards everyone finds out what happens, and then that's what gives all the courage, and really all the Greeks were all petrified. So a lot of them just ran away and just demoralized them, etc., etc. So that's where, in particular, the women and Yehudis come in, and the dairy. Okay. Let's go on to Gimel. Now, we know that there's no hespedim. So, okay. So generally there's no hespedim. We don't do hespedim, no on Chanuka, not on Rosh Chodesh, not Erev Shabbos after Chatzos. And the main point is, these are not days where we are supposed to be ma'orer bechi. The purpose of a hesped is to get us to cry and to feel bad. And that's not what we're supposed to be doing on these days. So, the Mikar Din and what's often done is no one speaks at all. They just bury the body. But it does happen many, many times where it just seems weird to do nothing. And so it's permitted, and some people, they do speak for a short time, and they say something just to introduce you to who the niftar was, and teach you some piece of musar, and it's supposed to be short.
Make the announcement that there's no Seder.
Right, so that's, and exactly. And then, so I did speak to a couple of Rabbanim, and they both said, yeah, you have to speak very short. And of course, one rabbi says that's like 3 minutes, and another rabbi says that's like 20 minutes. So that's Ma'aseh Shahaya. Okay. Again, I had to speak once at a funeral and for Chanuka and once on Rosh Chodesh. So Hashem get a chesed for the tzibur and myself. I was off, but I still had to speak for a few minutes. Okay. That's about hespedim. As far as, well, let me finish reading here. The Haggah, he just mentions, Ve'ein mit'anin yom shemeit bo av o eim. We don't fast on the yahrzeit if it falls out on Chanuka. V'tainit chalom b'Chanuka. Look over there. Le'inyan siduk hadin, ayin la'el. Look over there. About siduk hadin, just a word or two, but siduk hadin, we do not say, the custom is we do not say it on Chanuka, including Rosh Chodesh and Erev Shabbos after Chatzos. We don't say Tziduk Hadin or the special Kaddish. It's like a little bit extra long. Okay, there is a Velos on Chanuka, an Onein, that's an Onein on Chanuka. We still bury on Chanuka, so an Onein on Chanuka is still pater from all mitzvos. There's a Sudas Havra on Chanuka. Yes, there is. No difference. You come back, the neighbors are supposed to give. Well, on Yom Tov there's no Sudas Havra. And on Chol HaMoed, there's also no Sudas Havra. Some do in Yerushalayim, though. I'll just point out. The Shulchan Aruch does mention it, and that is Purim. There is Sudas Havra, but you give them Basar V'Yain.
How can there be a Sudas Havra in Chol HaMoed anyway? Because
you can bury. You still bury it, and
Shiva starts after.
Shiva starts after. I have to double check. It could be Dvarim Shebetzina starts right away. I'm blinking. But the Sudas Havra is supposed to be the day you come back. So that's a machlokes. But nowadays, no one does it except some have them in Yerushalayim. Good question. Okay. All right. Okay, so that's it for that. I'll just point out, if, according to the Mishnah Berurah, if you're an onein, so we know you're pater from all mitzvos, the Mishnah Berurah writes, I don't know if others agree, but if there's no one to light with you in the house, or you're not married or whatever, your wife's not around, and there's no one to light, then he says it's better to light without a bracha, because of Persumei Nisa. Certainly an onein is chayav in all negative commandments. He can't do any yisurim, and if he wants to eat bread, he's supposed to wash without a bracha. So the Mishnah Berurah puts it in that same category, but I didn't do a survey on what other poskim say. Okay, now the more common stuff. Tav Reish Ayin Aleph. Okay, Haseder Hadlakas Neros, and where to light them. So Aleph. Tzarich lizer me'od be'adlakas neros b'Chanuka. It's a very important mitzvah. You have to be very careful to light properly. Filu ani hamitparnes min tzedakah. Even an ani who lives off of tzedakah, partially. Shoel u'mocher kesuto v'lokeach shemen lahadlik. It doesn't matter how poor you are. You either get money, the candles, from the gabay tzedakah, or you sell whatever you can, or borrow whatever you need to do to get at least oil for one candle, even though there's a mitzvah for 8 candles, however many per night, Ramosif, Mahadran. An ani is not supposed to worry about being mahadrin. Gavei tzedakah, don't have to give him for that. Nowadays, I don't know, it's so cheap and we live berevach, but okay, I wouldn't have any tainas against that Baal tzedakah if he gives enough, but no chiyuv. Okay. Base. Kama neros madlik. Now, how many candles do we light? So we all know this, but you're going to have something interesting. Balayla harishon madlik echad. So on the first night, we light one, right? Mikan ve'elech mosif ve'holech echad b'chol layla. From then on, you keep on adding. All right, Beis Hillel, we keep on adding. The first day 1, then 2, then 3. Every day you keep on adding. Ad shebilel achron yiyu shmona. So that's what we'd call mahadrin min mahadrin, right?
No. Well,
yeah. It's mahadrin min mahadrin. Just mahadrin. Yeah. But he doesn't say it here. The first, we'll get to that. The first mahadrin, Ikar din, all you have to do is one house just lights one candle. Then we all know the second mahadrin, the first mahadrin, the next level up is you light per people. If you have 5 people in your family, you light 5, then every single night you light 5 candles. You have 8 people, again, without getting all the different opinions, if it's the 8th night, then you're going to light, if you have 8 people in your family, then you're going to light 8 candles every single night. Okay? Then, here the Shulchan Aruch just jumps to mahadrin min mahadrin that we keep on adding. Va'afilu imram min bnei habayit lo yadliku yoter. So the Shulchan Aruch writes, this is the opinion of Tosfos, that it doesn't matter how many people you have in your house. Every night, mahadrin min mahadrin is, if you have 8, let's say whatever, make it a different number, 7 people in your house, then every night, the first one is 1, the second night is 2, and there's no per person. Kids don't light. Wives don't light. Kids don't light. There's just one Chanukiah, one menorah. There's only one, just a balabayas. That's the Shulchan Aruch, and that's Tosfos. And here, the Sfardim follow Tosfos, one of those odd cases. Hagav, Yesh Omrim, the Ramah follows the Rambam. Right, we had this by Dalar Kosas, if you say 2 or 4 brachos. Where Sfardim follow Tosfos and Ashkenazim follow the Rambam. So, Hagav, this is Ashkenaz, V'yesh Omrim, the kol echad mibnei habayit yadlik. V'ken haminhag pashut. And that's the minhag by Ashkenazim, is that we light for every kid lights. Not the wife, because, what's it called? Ishta kegufa. So the minhag is only for children. And many say just the boys, but okay, Haga. V'yesh omrim, we just read that. V'yizaru litein kol echad ve'echad neirota b'makom meyuchad. So he says, but you should light them a little bit away from each other in a separate place. Kadei sheyehei heker kama neros madlikin. So it's so that it becomes obvious how many candles. That's more of an issue if you're just lighting a bunch of tea lights. But if you have proper menorahs, they don't necessarily have to be so far apart. Just so that it's obvious how many is being lit for. Okay, fine. Gimel. Ner sheyesh lo shtei piyot. So let's say you have an olden day type of candles. It's like a little lamp. What's the right word for it? Whatever. You have an oil lamp. And an oil lamp is better. And it's covered. It's got a cover on it. And it's got an opening on each side. So you can have a wick come out of each side and they look completely separate. So then, ner sheyesh lo shtei piyot, 2 openings, olelo bishvil shnayim, that counts as 2. Because it's 2 even though it's 1 bowl or 1 oil lamp, there's 2 separate wicks coming out of 2 separate holes, and that definitely counts as 2. Okay. Mishnah Berurah just points out, let's say you only have 1 menorah, and our menorahs have 8. You can have, let's say for the first night. This won't work on the 4th night, but let's say on the first night, you can have one guy light on one side and another guy light on the other side. And it looks separate enough that it counts as 2. And it's, okay. Dalet. Milei ke'ara shemen, v'kifa petilot. So now you take a bowl, it's filled with oil, and you lay in a bunch of wicks all the way around. Im kafa alea kli, if you cover the bowl completely, right? So now the bowl is completely covered, and you have, let's say 8, it depends what the story is, but let's say you have 8 wicks coming out of it. Olelo bish, I skipped, no? Yeah, bish. Im kafa alea kli, kol petila ola bishvil ner echad. So, as long as it's all covered, so all you see is wicks coming out all the way around. So since every wick looks separate, that counts, each one counts as separate light.
So
separate candle.
Really should count, even though they're on opposite sides. You could go really, they're all separate. Yeah.
Menorahs are good.
Right, so you could have 8 people light on the.
Well, the problem is, since they're all together, it's going to look like it's the 8th night, or it's not the way you want to do it. Lo kafa alea kli. I'm not saying you're not yotzei b'diavad, but I'm not sure, but you probably are, but that's not the way to do it. Lo kafa aleha kli. If you didn't cover the bowl, and now all you see is 8 wicks, or however many wicks are coming out of the bowl, afilu l'ner echad eino ola lefi shehu k'medora. Then you're not yotzei. You don't even have, and you have to repeat the whole lighting with the bracha, because you weren't even yotzei. You don't even have one light out of it, because hadlakas neros has to be done with one wick, and it can't be done with a bonfire. That was the kana.
This is where all the flames join together.
So it depends. It's a machlokas rishonim. Very good point. The Rosh, for example, says even if it's all open and they're all a full etzba apart, that's 2.5 centimeters apart from each flame, he holds you are yotzei for your average wick. Depends. You can have a thin wick, you can have a thicker wick, whatever. But for sure, if it's a couple etzbaot apart, for sure you're yotzei according to the Rosh. The Torah doesn't like it so much. Not that he says for sure you're not yotzei, but then how you start making all these little distinctions, and it still looks like one big bowl, or it still could look like one medura, and how you start making all these little rules depends to start measuring. He just says cover it up, and the Beis Yosef basically says the same thing, which is the Shulchan Aruch basically follows the Torah that you need to have it covered up. Otherwise, again, you might be yotzei b'diavad.
Mishabur says because shemikhabrot kol halav yachad.
No, I understand. I know. Even if they're not touching, you're still not yotzei if they're close together. And lachatchila, for sure, you still can't. It has to be covered. You'll see the Torah. You'll see the Beis Yosef. It's very clear. Okay, Haga. V'lachin. I think we're ready for this. Okay. L'chein, the Haga. Yesh lizar lahamid hanerot b'shura b'shaveh v'lo b'igol. Now this is more of a din l'chadchila or a chumrah from the Rishonim. That you should make, when you're going to line up, here we're talking about tea lights, okay, a type of fire. Or a bunch of little oil lamps. Each one, you get one out of it. So you're going to line up 8 in a row, right?
This is against using a bowl.
Yeah. We don't use, you could use a bowl if it's covered up, but this is...
I'm wondering if the lachain is so that you don't come to light a bowl, so that's why it should be in a row. It seems to be that's what he's saying.
Right. Well, let's keep reading. Depends exactly how your take on it, but or how you understand, or how the Rishon understood. If you're going to line up, let's say 8 tea lights, for example, you want to make them in a straight line, v'lo be'igol, and not in a circle. Okay, it's not. And many point out even a little bit of a zigzag is not ideal, because it could lead to making it in a circle, or it can look like a big blob, depending on how it's, you don't have to do it with like a, what's it called, a ruler per se, but basically they should be in a row. And it certainly should not be be'igol. For sure the Rishonim say you can't do it in a circle, tahave kemedura. And that's, because then it might lead to making like a medura, it might look like a medura. Again, it depends, how you understand. Nowadays, sometimes you'll see a menorah, when they sell them, a little bit with a design, a little bit up and down, a little bit of a zigzag. Mistama, it's mutter lechatchila, certainly mikar adin.
Up and down.
Like you can have vertically. You can have it, they can make them vertically or horizontally. Mikar adin lechatchila, it's probably 100% kosher. You're about to see the Rama. The question is, will you call that mehudar? So that depends who you ask. Mutar lahadlik lepatomo chekorin lampa mechar shakol ner muvdal harbe mechavero. So here the case is, even if you have a properly built menorah and it's in a circle, and still the Rama says it's okay because it's very separate and obvious. Each one is its own. V'izaro kishaosim menorah tefilu b'shava. And you should be careful if you're using it by wax. You're just taking wax and you're basically melting it onto the table, and you're just putting them along the wall, whatever it is. You're just melting them. You shouldn't. You should not actually make the candles touching each other. The have kemedura becomes like a medura, and there's the wicks, at least according to the Pischei Teshuvos, you don't have to worry about the candle itself, but at least the wicks should be at least an etzba apart from each other. And just as an Eitzah Tova, be careful, don't light so many menorahs right near each other, because if you have too many menorahs all near each other, the heat can just melt them all down, and within 5 minutes they'll all be flat. That's just a side thing.
If your kid comes home with a wooden menorah, don't use it at all.
Filu b'ner shel Shabbos v'yontiv yizaru shelo la'asot kain, and you should not make them touching also for Shabbos and Yom Tov.